This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
At Pepe Sayer, we focus on quality. So if someone comes into your restaurant and they see you're using Pepe Sayer, they know immediately that that is a quality product you've got in front of you on the table. And that comes from a decade of just doing quality butter day after day.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
As much as I love catching fish, I also love selling them. It's good to really see where your fish ends up and see that it's the care that's been put in is, people are loving what you're doing.
This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. I'm John Sussman. Fishing has been woven into the fabric of coastal communities throughout history. For hundreds of years, people have relied upon the resources that were bountiful around the coast of Australia. And over time, people built family businesses around commercial fishing and seafood production. Today, commercial fishing in Australia provides sustainable seafood to consumers across the world. We are rebuilding and protecting our fisheries, not just for the fishermen and consumers of today, but for future generations as well. That's why it's important to cultivate a strong base of young fishermen to carry on the legacy of today's fishery leaders. While commercial fishing is an economic driver in many parts of regional Australia, there are obstacles and challenges. Commercial fishermen are ageing, with over 50% of commercial fishers in Australia older than 55 years of age. And there is a shortage of young fishermen to take over from the current generation. 30 years ago, a young person who wanted to fish commercially just needed a boat, some fishing gear, and a sense of adventure to get started in the business. Today, young fishermen face staggering entry-level costs, high operating fees, and a level of risk that is equivalent to buying a pub, with equally the number of regulations, restrictions, and demands. But there is a next generation of fishers who are coming through, excited about the future and committed as well. Jack Henderson is one such commercial fisher who, whilst having been brought up in a dedicated and successful fishing family, has a burning drive and ambition of his own for the future.
I'm Jack Henderson from Port Lincoln in South Australia. I'm 26 years of age and I work in the marine scale. I currently fish in the Spencer Gulf and venture up the west coast as far as Sojourner. My main focus is to target on sand crabs. We've recently bought a 100-pot sand crab licence, so that gives me the opportunity to run 100 pots, quite similar to what the Blue Swimmer boys use. And I also target nanny guy up the west coast. We use drop line systems for them, so that's all line caught. All our fish up there are all icky jimmy, brain spiked. We like to bleed them and then place them into a ice slurry.
Although born with salt in his veins, Jack's drive and enthusiasm for fishing drove him to pester his father to allow him to pursue his passion for fishing.
Yeah, so a lot of it started with Dad. When I was old enough to go out, I would go out pilchard fishing. He was pilchard fishing for the Puglisi family. They were a beautiful family. They paid the big bucks of Puglisis. They would let us kids come down. I've got a brother that's 2 years younger than me, so we would go down to the boat. We'd be off the boat catching salmon while they're unloading the pilchards. Then I got to about 13 and Dad said, "Rightio, come out." So I come out for the night. I don't reckon I say much of the night because I was quite crook and tired, but he said, "Do you want to go again?" And I said, "Yep." And he looked at me funny. He said, "You were sick all night?" I said, No, I'm keen to go. So it was just, at the start, it definitely what I was expecting it to be, but it just grew further and further, and the love for fishing just progressed. It's all I wanted to do. And I think Dad got to the stage where he's like, "Well, I can see what you want to do." So, he was always giving me the opportunity to go fishing, to come fishing, take me down to other boats, meet the skippers, learn about other fisheries, so it was good. Probably at the age, I would have been around 15, heading out with Dad. We had a marine scale licence. We used to head out gummy shark fishing, so we would have tea, then we'd sort of, cruise on out at 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock after tea, fish until about 2, 3 in the morning, come in, and Dad would say, righto, you got to go to school. I said, oh, come on, we just got in at 3 in the morning. Can't I help unload? No, you got to go to school. So I did get the opportunities to go out younger, but it was quite tricky with school. And Dad always said, you got to finish school or you got to go get a trade. You're not going fishing. So as the years went on at school, I wanted to do a trade, but I was so interested in fishing that it was hard to sort of steer away from it. So I went on to get my skipper's tickets and my engineer's tickets, and then Dad said, rightio, you can do the 28 days on the marine scale licence. So I started taking the boat by myself at the age of 17. I was still in school, but being able to go out in Adelaide, golf with St Vincent, snapper fishing, and that was quite a hit back in those days. There was quite a large amount of fish getting caught, and you were really amongst the action. It was quite a fierce fishery. There was a lot of competition, so it really set me up in my fishing career to go and experience it and see it firsthand. Yeah, it was pretty daunting. There was a lot of fishermen over there, and the fish they school up onto wrecks, harder bottom. So, you could have 13 fishermen fishing the one patch of fish, and there's lines going everywhere. And because I'm a new kid on the block, you got to earn a lot of respect in the fishery so you can get it back. So it was quite daunting going out there and, getting amongst the big boys, yet I'm still just a little fish. So it was tricky. I found it quite hard, but once you get amongst it, you learn, you get a bit of respect from the other fishermen, and I think they can see that, you're there for the good, So it was good. There was no better feeling. We'd been fishing the last 2 weeks previously to me taking the boat, and the fishing was pretty quiet. So we went out there. There was a school of fish south of Ardrossan off of Vincent. There was probably 6 boats working the school of fish at the time, and we were one of the boats in the fleet that had a sonar. So, there was a fair bit of action on the wreck. We couldn't really get amongst it. So I decided to steam half a mile out to the east towards Adelaide, and, everyone knew we had the sonar, so I'd do a few circles, make it look like there was a bit of fish action, get the decky to throw the floats over and just pretend we started shooting, and then all these boats started coming over. And I said, rightio, pull the floats in, and we went quickly across the wreck and started shooting off, and that caused a bit of action, but that's how we sort of had to do it to get in there, otherwise you get pushed out. And we had a few good lifts, a few 100 kilo snapper, and I was just over the moon. I could see Dad was quite happy, but he didn't really want to pep me up too much. He was quite hard like that, but I think he was, quite stern, and I think it made me a better fisherman for it. The first catch, we were fishing up with the Sikalellas up at Wakefield, so we went back up there, loaded them on the back of the ute. Dad pretty much said, you jump back in the boat, that's where you belong, go back fishing, I'll deal with the fish. So Dad took the fish into Adelaide. That would have been, most of it, majority back then was going to Safco. Con Hayden were taking fish, international oysters. He was sort of spreading the fish out, but I was too busy thinking about the next load. I wasn't worried about where they were going. At that time, I was just worried about focusing on trying to catch them and let the shore manager do his job.
The Spencer Gulf is the westernmost of the larger of 2 large inlets on the southeastern coast of South Australia, facing the Great Australian Bight. It spans from the Eyre Peninsula in the west to York Peninsula in the east. Port Lincoln is a town on the lower Eyre Peninsula, situated on the shore of Boston Bay, and is the largest city on the West Coast region, and home to one of Australia's most diverse and productive commercial fishing ports, and arguably some of the most diverse and productive fishermen.
It's quite a unique place down here at Port Lincoln. We're in a pretty nice little spot down here where we have the option to we can swing if we want to go up the west coast or fish out here, depending on the weather conditions. Summertime we have a lot of sou'easters. That's generally when I'm crabbing, because we'll get the warmer water come up the gulfs with the sou'east, so I'll tend to stick it out in the Spencer Gulf and be sand crab fishing. But every now and then we can sort of switch over and I can head up the coast. Once that swell drops out, we can head out nanny guy fishing. So it's a beautiful spot to be able to swing from side to side. We're not isolated as such as some other places, because we're on the bottom of the Eyre Peninsula. We're quite lucky in the way that we can fish. The Spencer Gulf is, it can be harsh with the tides and the winds. It's quite short, sharp and shiny in the Gulf, but when you start going up the west coast, it's quite rugged coastlines. You got swell, you got limited access to where you can and can't fish. Some of the best fishing spots are the hardest to get to. So you find yourself, driving up the coast, finding little beaches to try and launch on to get out to these beautiful spots, because it's so few and far between. Everything that you can think of, it's here, whether it be whales or sharks or dolphins. And it's just, we've got such a massive fishing port here in Port Lincoln, so you're forever seeing different fishermen or fisheries and how they operate, and it's just a really good vibe. You can be, 300 kilometres up the coast and get stuck, and if it's not a farmer or another fisherman, someone's always willing to help out or give you a hand. So it's a really good community in that sense.
Artisanal or small-scale fisheries are traditional operations involving fishing households as opposed to commercial companies. They use relatively small amounts of capital and energy. Small fishing vessels make short fishing trips close to shore, and their catch is mainly for local sale. The artisanal fisher is becoming more and more important as both chefs and consumers are awakening to how special both their job and their catch is. Hairy times are just another day at the office.
Yeah, so I run out of a 22-foot Nereus, which is a fiberglass boat with a half cab. That's all trailable, so I'll tow that behind my ute. That gives me the flexibility of shifting my effort from Spencer Gulf to the west coast, depending on the weather. So I can pick the weather, work out what I want to do, jump in the ute and drive to where I'd like to go fishing. It's quite simple. When I go up the west coast, it's always good to, put a deckhand on, because it can be quite tricky at times. Beach launching, you got swell and it can get quite tricky, but it's quite easy. Two of us, one's in the ute, one's in the boat, back them in, and get ready for your day's work. Yeah, I've had a few hairy times where we're a bit eager to go fishing and the tide's too low, but I can't help myself and want to get out there. And then you end up getting stuck. But with the swell, there's lots of bommies and reefs, so it's quite a tricky place at times. You'll be steaming out or coming in and you got to battle the swells, and in a little boat it can get quite hairy at times. That's what it's all about, to go out there and catch these fish and provide them for the markets. It's something that I love doing, and it's just a beautiful place to do it.
The beauty of the artisanal fisher is to be both conversant and adept at many forms of fishing. Just as a chef may choose to broaden his or her skill set by staging in kitchens to build up experience, so too the artisanal fisher benefits from time in differing and broad-ranging fisheries.
So between doing that, I went off cray fishing for the Rowe family here in Port Lincoln on the Shooting Star. I was a deckhand on there for about 3 seasons. I then decided to jump off and go pilchard/tuna fishing with the Blasloff family on the fishing vessel Simone. I done that for a year, and I said to Dad, Dad, I want to go back marine scale fishing. You know, I want to have a crack. He sort of looked at me and he said, rightio, we'll see if we can make it work. So we put my name on the license, and then it was quite daunting because it's once you put your name on the license, it's you got to fish it, so there's no working for somebody else and, earning an income. It's solely off of you. If you want to work hard, and it was all new to me, so it's quite daunting knowing, well, can I make it? Can I do this? Can I earn enough money to live? So it all started from there. In the first couple of years, they were quite tough. I was trying to settle into the fishery. We come into a 3-year closure with a snapper, and the snapper was my bread and butter. So to have that taken away, it was another step back, and it was like, whoa, what are we going to do here to keep going? So it was a lot of trial and error in the fishery, hand lining with whiting and squid, and trying to diversify. And then I started sand crabbing and getting a real passion for it. It was a hunt. It was like snapper fishing all over. You were going out there, and you weren't sure if you were going to see anything, but it was the hunt. And when you found them, there was just no better feeling. You were on fish, and it was just a very good feeling.
There are a few new fisheries that come to market. With a keen sense for the culinary quality and value of the local West Coast two-spot sand crab, Jack has made it his task to revitalise and develop this fishery with a view to making it equal to other crab fisheries from around Australia. Requiring an equal mix of technology, cunning and local knowledge, his approach is both practical and visionary.
So with the crab fishing, I based a lot of it was out of my 22-foot Neris. So we have a shed located in Port Lincoln, just outside the marina. I've got all my ice machine, my chillers, everything out here. So this is base. So every morning you'll come down, you'll have your ice machine running, load up your ice, go collect bait, get ready for the day. I would head out. In the Nearest, we're allowed to run 10 hoop/drop nets. So we're only allowed a combined of 10 nets. So we'll go out fishing, we'll set those nets off. Those nets are just connected with a buoy line with a float on top of the surface. We will set our 10 pots where we think the crabs are. It's sort of, at the start, it's a bit of a guessing game. You're sort of moving your gear around until you find the crabs. And then once you find the crabs, you got to stay with them because they can disappear so quickly. The tide can change. They'll start crawling to the east, to the west. So it's quite you really got to be on the money, and you got to be quite focused because they're forever shifting. And then after doing that for 3 years, I said, Dad, there's got to be an easier way. There's these 100-pot sand crab licenses. So we bought one of these, and it's a funny story because Dad and Harpo used to own this license, 8-10 years ago, and we've ended up buying it back. Dad said, if I knew you were going to be a crab fisherman, we would have bloody kept it. But so we've bought this license, and that allows us to run 100 pots. Dad had sold the pots that he used to own, so we got in contact with the Barnes boys up at Broughton. They were lucky enough to help us out. They were amazing. Helped us out with some pots, got us all started. And then I started running them out of a 50-foot West Coaster called the Joby 2. And from there, it's just been a lot of trial and error. The fish will work good in the shallow, they're harder in the deep. It's been a tricky fishery, and no one has cracked it yet. But I'm very determined to turn it into a fishery, and I can see potential in it. So at the moment, I've got the pots back in the shed, and I'm back into running the little boat. At the minute, it's the downtime of the season, so this time of year's in the shed doing a lot of maintenance, and then we'll try and crank back up around October, November, depending on the season and that water temperature. The water temperature plays a pretty big part in how it affects the crabs. So until then, we'll pretty much get ready and be blazing to head out there. Probably 90% of our crabs are sold into Melbourne, into the Melbourne market. It's been a tricky one with the sand crabs. They're a very delicate species. They tend to want to go black under their gills, which that is just a visible sign of, because their shell is quite transparent and it's a lighter colour. This doesn't affect the quality of the meat or the flavour. It's just quite a visible thing. But majority of it will go to Melbourne. We'll send a little bit into Sydney and Safco, and there's a few restaurants and retail buyers in Adelaide that will purchase them. And through the bigger months, when the price can drop a fair bit in Melbourne, so it gets a bit tricky. So we've started to roll our own meat out and try and do a bit of value adding. We pack them into 500 gram packs and 250 gram packs to send off to chefs and retail stores from Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney. We've had some go over to the west to Phil over at Finn's. So it's been a real trial and error, and just trying to build the market up and get it out there to everyone to try.
Being able to work the seasonal cycles of seafood demands flexibility, knowledge, and a range of skills across a range of fisheries. For Jack, winter means a completely different fishing method and location, but with the same focus on quality, he's earned a reputation for being a quality producer.
Yeah, so through the winter times, we will put the pots in the shed and we'll focus a bit more on the scale fish, mainly nannygai, or bite redfish as it's called. It's quite a tricky one. They're very conditional fish. We find if the swell's too large, the fish will move off the lumps. You got to have flat, calm conditions because you're traveling so far, and you're trying to fish in some pretty rugged country. So you need all your stars to line up to be able to access some of these places. It's quite a tricky one. There's, every now and then you might be able to go 4 times in a month, or you might get to go 1 in 3 months. It's limited access. So when we're forever looking at our phones, I'm looking at the weather going, can I go? Can I go? And then bam, you're ready. So you're in the shed, you're getting everything ready. Head up there. It's always beautiful conditions when you go out because you want it to be flat, calm. You're in quite a small boat, so the elements have to be, well suited to the boat. We'll head out there. I use a fishing method of drop lining for nannygai. So we'll come up to a lump. We're looking for fish on the sounder, so nannygai will come up quite well on a sounder. So we'll sound around the lumps and we'll look for fish. Once we find some fish, I'll throw the rod over, just get it down the bottom and just see what the fish is like. Sometimes we'll pull up to a lump and we'll think it's nanny guy, but it can be, snapper or leather jacket. So it's forever putting the rod down and just seeing what's there. If I get a double header, I sort of get a fairly good idea that we're on a school of nanny guy. And then we'll set up the drop line. So the drop line's, it's got a weight down the bottom and it hangs vertically in the water. It's just like a buoy line, but with the bottom you've got a lead weight. And then depending on the lump and the fish, we'll run anywhere from 5 to 25 drop line hooks. The drop line hooks they're quite short. They're probably 20 centimetres, and they'll hang out off of your main line, and they'll be quite close together. And the nanny guy, they're quite unique in the way that they will keep swimming higher and higher. So, your lump could be, we're fishing anywhere from 50 to 100 metres of water, and your lump might come up 15 metres, 10 metres, 5 metres, depending on the lump and where the fish is sitting. But, the fish can swim up 15, 20 metres in the water column to go for your hook. So it's quite a unique fishery in the way, and they're just a beautiful looking species. They're bright red, they've got beautiful big eyes, and they're just a beautiful fish. They're very, very underrated, I believe. You got to go so far to get them, and they're just, if they're treated with the love that they deserve, they are a very premium fish. Sashimi grade, that icky jimmy, the brain spike and the clip under the gills to bleed them, it preserves that meat. And once you've put in a slurry to get that core temperature of the fish down towards zero, there's no better way. But you got to be careful too with the slurry. As cold as you do want them, you sort of affect their eyes and you can get them quite cold. So it's quite a balance of pulling the fish straight out of the water and giving it the icky jimmy and the bleeding them, and getting them in there and getting them cold and stiff, and then packing them out straight away individually into eskies. And we like to soldier stack them and keep them upright, and then put sheets of plastic over the top before we ice them. All these things help, and that's what we're trying to do when we send these fish to the market is show people that we're giving the fish what it deserves to give it a premium product.
The Ocean Watch Master Fisherman program was designed to raise the standard of responsible fishing in Australia. Master fishermen are committed to ensuring that the individual fishing practices go above and beyond the requirements prescribed by state, national and international regulations. Jack is a star graduate of the 2022 Master Fisherman program.
Yeah, the Master Fisherman's course was good. As a fisherman, we got told about this course. We got this, and that'd be great. But as a fisherman, if the weather's good, I'm in the boat. But it was lucky enough that this day it was terrible. It was windy. It was blowing. So I said, rightio, we'll go to this course. Woody was there. He was the main bloke, and he was just an absolute cruiser. He made you feel really, really welcomed, and it was good being a one-day course, because a lot of fishermen, their life is fishing. So to go out and do something, it can be quite tricky. So I found that being a one-day course, it was easy. It's only one day, and I gained a lot out of it. It was good because it was right up my alley. It was, we're all about being sustainable and the way we treat our fish, and telling the community that we're doing our best to keep the fishery in a pristine condition. Our methods of fishing are, we're very limited in what we can and can't do.
Having the opportunity to move upstream in the supply chain, building direct relationships with chefs and retailers is just another part of the job for a young operator in the commercial seafood sector.
Yeah, I think the future's bright. Everybody's starting to get on board and really showcase their product. Everyone's going away from this, catching volume. It's sort of getting to a point where we're really wanting to showcase our product, and a lot of people are wanting to put their name to their product, which I think is great, because if you're willing to put your name on your product, that means you're proud. You're proud to be sending your fish and have your name. Like with our nanny guide, we tag our fish and we just put a little Henderson Seafoods logo on it. But it's all these little things that, really grab fish buyers and consumers' eyes. They can see the care taken, and it's really good to then get, you can send fish to Sydney, and then social media, Instagram, bam, someone's got your fish. Oh, beautiful fish, Henderson. It's all those little things that really get it out into the community and boast your name.
It's said that fishing adds years to your life and life to your years. For a young person to be so passionate and committed to a craft is both an inspiration and a motivation. If Jack were a chef, I'm sure his recognition would be across national daily papers and monthly periodicals.
Oh, I love it all. It's just being on the ocean, there's nothing like it. When on the shore it's all cruisy, but when you're out there, it's, you just strive to be the best. You want to be out there catching fish, and you just got this hunt inside you to find them, to find the fish and to get the fish, and then treat that fish and get it onto the market. It's, as much as I love catching fish, I also love selling them. To catch them, all the time, the effort, everything involved, to then just go send it away and not know what happens. It's good to really see where your fish ends up and see that it's, the care that's been put in is, people are loving what you're doing.
While the international community has taken steps to reduce overfishing, the future of commercial fishing remains uncertain. Proper management has allowed some fish populations to rebound, but others continue to decline. The quality of Australian fisheries managers is providing a beacon of positivity in the world of commercial fishing, which should be recognised and celebrated. Young professional master fishermen like Jack Henderson deserve commercial return and a broad community recognition for their special contribution to the ongoing Australian culinary landscape. This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. A Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Sussman. Follow us on Instagram at Fishtales Seafood Podcast, or email us at fishtalespodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world every Friday on your podcast app.